So Champion Fulton, before we meet in Birdland, we're appropriately going to meet in Kansas City. To,
I
we're going to
like
get
it.
to the alpha of all of this. So thank you for reaching out. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. You got a brand new project. Thank you for taking a minute out.
Of course, thank you.
Absolutely. So before we get into this, I know that you're a very busy person. You love seeing the world. You love seeing human beings. Living through COVID was quite a thing. 3 years, especially the world of jazz, was turned upside down. How now, with the fact that we're all coming out of it, how did you ultimately survive it and get to this point where we're talking now? You got new albums, live shows. How did you do it?
Well, during 2020, so like right in March of 2020, I didn't really have the idea, but my family had the idea that I should do a live stream because I was so down that all my gigs had been canceled and I was feeling very isolated. And as you said, I like people and being out. So being at home was not fun.
Yeah.
And so I started doing a weekly live stream, which turned into Live from Lockdown. We did that show for, I think, 82 weeks straight every Sunday.
Wow.
It was really great for me because it gave me something to do every week. We did a lot of themes. We'd be like, okay, this week is the theme of Harry James. This week is Count Basie. This week we did multiple Sarah Vaughan shows, multiple Billie Holiday shows, and it just gave me something to focus on, something to get dressed up for, and to connect with people. And so we did that show, as I said, for like 82 weeks, and that kept me going. I also actually played quite a few gigs in 21. I traveled a lot in 2021. And then in 2022, things increased even more. Last year was one of my busiest years ever. So things are definitely feeling not even back to normal for me because it's more than it was before the pandemic for me. But it just still feels, the world still feels a little bit weird. Some countries are more open than others with regards to like audiences coming out
Yeah.
and stuff. But I think it's approaching normal.
Yeah, and I don't know that we were ever going to get back to anything that was prior to that, but
Right.
I get what you're saying, and we are actually getting to a point where I know here in Kansas City, going to live shows, it's
Hmm.
happening, people are there, the architecture of everything's different. I think there's a different appreciation,
Yeah.
that's going into it. And what's fascinating about the time of COVID, like I look at Emmett Cohen, like
Oh yeah.
before this happened, he exploded. Like
Yeah.
it's like I'm still like marveled at like there's things that happen in the world and people that go to these places. You're like, how did that happen? Because you were doing live streams, all kinds of people were doing live streams, but for some reason there was a chemistry that happens. And how did your audience grow? How did things grow for you during that time?
Well, it did grow, which was great. I mean, because I think in the beginning, it waned, but in the beginning, I think people were really excited about live streams. So even if it was not the best quality, or we were all kind of struggling to learn that technology right at the beginning of 2020, but people were into it and they were very supportive. I met a lot of fans in countries that I still have not been to. Like I have a lot of fans in India. I've never been to India. That I just met through these live streams, through being on the internet. And I always appreciated my social media, but that gave me another level of appreciation
Yeah.
for being able to connect with people and being able to be myself and basically have a good time. We were having a good time, I think, with that show. Um, and sometimes I still want to do it, but it's different now. I feel like doing the live stream now just feels, it feels, I don't want to say it feels lame because that's not what I mean, but it has a different feeling because I want to play more in person again.
You know what's ironic about this whole time period is that Zoom shrank the world and everybody got a chance to like be connected. But by proxy, we realized how much we need human contact. So when you talk about performing live and wanting to do that more and being in front of people, I think that's kind of a byproduct of everybody. Like we were connected, but we weren't. So now community is so key to everything we do.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That's wild. So it has to feel good, kind of in a Phoenix Rising moment for the jazz community and the entertainment world, because you have an album coming out celebrating live, celebrating Birdland. I mean, it has to be kind of an amalgamation of a lot of things that feel good.
That's really funny. I didn't think about that because the record is live. It's live recording that we did last year. at Birdland. I didn't think about it being live recording like in the wake of COVID, but that's a very good point. That perhaps was sort of a subconscious decision that we made.
Right. You know how many times I bring this up and people are like, I didn't even think about it being live. And it's probably because to a certain degree, I think as an artist, you're so close to it. It's
Mhm.
just, it's different when you have, that's the beauty of having people look from the outside in, because everybody's perception of what you do on any album is going to be vastly different from the next person.
Totally. No, that's a great point. So I wanted to make this record, which is called Meet Me at Birdland. We recorded it live last September at Birdland in New York City. And I've been playing at Birdland for a long time. I love that club. I love my band. It's my longtime trio. And we've done a lot of different kinds of projects. We've done themed projects. We've done a double CD. We've done all this stuff. And I was like, you know what we haven't done? We haven't recorded live at a real jazz club that we love. And so that's where the idea came from. And I went to Johnny with that idea, and he's the owner of Birdland. And I said, I want to do this. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. I was a little surprised that he was so agreeable. And then we moved forward with the idea. But it was something I just thought would be really fun.
You know, for the average listener, I don't know that they understand what goes into capturing the sound live. Like when you're in a studio, it's built for that. You got rooms, you got it's a solidarity thing. It's like you got each instrument, each track. Maybe people don't
Mhm.
even realize what's into that. I've been in a studio and seen that enough. But in a live environment, you got to get all of that together. What kind of process is that from the beginning of talking to the owner to getting to a point where you're on stage and it's happening?
So I think we started talking. I don't. I guess we started talking maybe in the springtime of last year about this idea, or summer. I already had a week scheduled in September, and I said, "Let's do it then," you know. And we picked. We thought, "Oh well, we'll just record 2 nights." Ultimately, we ended up recording 3 nights. Um, we decided. I love my engineer Mike Marciano from Systems 2. He's done all my recordings for the past 10 years. He's really my favorite, and I said I want him definitely involved. So he was going to mix and master, which is sort of the post production. And then the club really wanted to use their engineer Matt Kershing to record the live part of the show. And actually, Matt did a fantastic job. I think the sound of the record is really impressive considering it's live, like you're saying, because
Yeah.
we're just on stage, and I sing and play at the same time. So there's a lot of bleed
Mhm.
between the microphones. Like you can really hear the voice in the piano mic and vice versa. And then we had a small plastic baffle around the drums, but it was not like a big thing, you know, just like a little
Yeah.
baffle sort of around the bass drum. And we just went in, and we on the that week during September we went in on the first night. We did a sound check for about an hour, and then that was it. We were just off and running.
Wow. It's kind of the
Yeah.
way it is with jazz, though. I always hear about, oh, Radiohead's getting ready to go in the studio. They're going to be in there for 3 months. And then I always listen to jazz musicians, and it's like, yeah, we got in for about 2 hours and we were out. It's like,
Exactly. Yeah. Our live recordings, like we usually do a live recording in one day, which is
yeah.
like 6 to 8 hours, um, in the studio. So this was just the gig. We didn't have a set list. We talked a little bit about, well, what tunes do you think we should do? Where do you want to see it go? But we didn't have a set list. I was just calling tunes on the stage. Um, and it just turned out really well. I have to say, I think, as I said, I think the sound is fantastic. The two engineers did a great job on that.
Well, I mean, isn't that the way it is with anything that you do? It's like you're only as good sometimes, or only embellished as much as those that are around you that know what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. You should totally think a lot about the various members of your team
Right.
because, you know, my band, of course, I love Hide and Fuku. We've been together so long, and they did a great job. And then the club just, you know, I think the club has a good feeling. And once my fans found out it was going to be a live recording, everyone wanted to be there to be on the record, you know, and that was really nice. And I asked, like, we sort of did a little bit of crowdsourcing, like, what tunes do you want to hear? And so I think they also felt very involved.
One of our premier places here in Kansas City is called the Green Lady Lounge. Have you ever been?
No, I have never been there, but I would like to see it.
It's like a vampire lair. You walk in, it's all red. It's like you just you expect like characters to just kind of float out of the wall. But it's a great place, and there's a band called Chris Hazelton. He's a Hammond B3 cat, and he leads this thing called the Boogaloo Seven. And it's this whole collective, and he recorded I think it was a week before we won the World Series in 15, and they invited
Oh,
everybody there, and you could feel the Kansas City energy in the crowd,
yeah,
and to this day, I listen to that. I got a copy on vinyl, and it's so cool because you can just feel that there's I mean, not only is it live recording, but there was a lot going on in the city, and it was really cool, so
yeah.
when you can capture that, it's definitely cool, so,
Yeah,
um
I think that's important, and it's so funny that you mentioned that because I've made a few other live recordings before, but as I said, not one in New York, and I think there's a special energy in New York, just like you're talking about that energy before the World Series, like, and I wanted to capture that here.
And that's the thing that is always fascinating to me about New York, is I haven't really been there and in the club scene there. I mean, but I always talk to people that like I have that relativity because of 18th and Vine. Like I'm going into these places where Bird was going and all of these people have gone to. And when you can tap into that history, there's so many ghosts that are swimming around. There's so much that happened that you feel it and you continue this legacy,
Exactly.
and that's a big deal. So talk to me. You said you just were kind of throwing tunes out there. So you just kind of went in and it was truly 100% improv.
Well, we have, we've been together as a band now like 18, 19 years
Okay.
pretty regularly. So we have a very large repertoire over all those years to draw on. And I didn't plan, but I had a few ideas. I thought, well, I really would like to have a live version of Just Friends because I love that arrangement. I thought I would like to see that in a live recording. And I wanted to feature, like, we love to play the blues. I wanted to really feature a blues number, something. And I thought also with the live recording, it's okay to have longer songs. Like there's an energy there with a longer song that you might not feel in the studio.
Yeah.
So I had some general ideas. And the guys had some other ideas too, like, oh, they really love to play Theme for Basie, the Phineas Newborn song. So we wanted to get that on there for them. And as I said, we had crowdsourced a little bit, and those tunes were Spring Can Really Hang You Up the Most. A lot of my fans loved that show from Live from Lockdown, that song.
Yeah.
And they wanted to hear I Didn't Mean a Word I Said, which you don't ever hear anymore. But I actually recorded that on my first record. So that was sort of like a little nod back to my first recording. So we just had these ideas, but I didn't go on stage with a set list or a list at all. I just was thinking, I had these in my mind, and we went out there and played.
So by the time you're talking about this album, you've
Mhm.
already moved on to the next thing, so to speak, right?
Well, sort of, a little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. I mean, because it's just it takes so much time to get to the point where it's released and you're promoting and you're doing everything. So I
Mhm.
guess my question to you is this: what are you doing to promote this album, and what's your itinerary now that the warm months are here, people are out playing, things are opening up?
Well, I just got home from being on the road. I was on the road from February 5th until the end of April, and I was in Europe and Canada. This month, we're traveling domestically. We're going to be in South Carolina. We're going to be in Connecticut. We're going to be back at Birdland for Memorial Day weekend. We're doing a lot of shows. I'm going back to Europe this summer. But I can also say, and this is sort of an interesting thing, and this will be the first interview where I've talked about that I feel like my band and I, have been going so hard since COVID, actually, really pushing to have gigs, pushing to do this, pushing to make projects. And this summer there's a little more space in the summer, and I'm a little bit okay with that because I would like to sit down and practice. Which, when you're working all the time and when you're working on a recording all the time, or you're doing all these things, you get away from just being at home with your instrument. And I miss that a lot.
Do you think maybe that feeling that you have was a little bit born out of the 3 years of living through COVID, where we were all kind of self-imposed into that exile world?
No, well, because I think during that time, I traveled quite a bit. You're going to think this is crazy. In 2020, I did a 2-week tour. In November of 2020, I did a 2-week tour of Denmark. The entire world was shut down. I flew to Europe on a KLM jet with 10 other people. There was nobody on that plane. And I went and I toured in Denmark for 2 weeks in the middle of lockdowns. And then in 2021, I went to Europe over 10 times.
Wow.
traveling to perform like for either for 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes I went for one concert. Many times I went for one concert because I would go for one concert there, then I would come back, I would do live from lockdown, I would go back. And that was weird. And then 2022 was even more busy. Like I went over there even more. I took over 100 COVID tests in 2021
Wow.
so I could travel and play
Wow.
these gigs. So I think it's been in that way for me and for my band like a very busy time and sort of a high stress time, because we were traveling during COVID, all the regulations. Are we going to get sick? Are we going to get stuck? Because you test when you take off, you test when you land, and then often we would test before the show. Some presenters wanted us to test at the venue, so it was a really stressfully strange 3 years
Oh
there.
yeah, absolutely it was. I think I remember interviewing you before you were getting ready to go, and I wasn't
Yeah.
surprised only because it was you. Now, if it would have been another musician, I would have been like, "Really? You're gonna what? Wait, hold on a second."
No.
Yeah, so it wasn't surprising because I know that you're active and all of that. And it's hard when you are active that time period, I remember, because I know myself, like I was driving out to nature sanctuaries, I was getting outside, I was like just getting out and going, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, being as safe as you can, obviously, but
Yeah.
you just some of us have a restless spirit and you got to go.
That was the thing. And then also, I felt that there were people who wanted, like in Denmark, they really wanted me to come. They wanted me to do this tour. We did this tour. It was half capacity, all the venues, and it was cold, so we were inside.
Yeah.
But I had to get a special letter from the government of Denmark saying I was on a special cultural mission,
Yeah.
and because it wasn't allowed to we weren't allowed to travel, so we
Right.
had all these government papers involved. We had the embassy involved, and it was just it was a wild time, but it felt good. It felt good to do it. It felt good to play music for people. Then when they even if I couldn't meet them after we couldn't have a meet and greet or whatever, it felt good to have that connection even from the stage. So it was a very peculiar time for everyone, of course, but all that test, and really, I never had a positive test, not once. I never got stuck in any country, and other people I would be with, not in my band, but other musicians that I saw on the road, it did happen to a lot of people. So I
Yeah.
felt like I was really flying and a very just trying to be cool.
You were kind of like one of those 70s cartoons where you just had that invisible shield over wherever you went, like that
I
you were
wondered because
protected.
people really they would ask me, but I was of course taking a lot of vitamins and washing my hands a lot, doing all of that kind of thing. But I don't know. Maybe I just have a good immune system, or
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I think
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just best to be like, yeah, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to talk about it. Just move
Yeah, I
on.
don't know really, but that
Yeah.
was it. So we're kind of looking, and when I say honestly, when I say a slower summer, I mean we are working every weekend in May. Then we're in Europe in July, and then in Europe in August again. So we're still pretty busy.
Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right. So, it's interesting when you mentioned Denmark and Europe, a lot of musicians went over there, and found refuge. Do you feel like this sense of history and yeah.
Absolutely. So especially with Denmark, of course, because we have Dexter Gordon famously
Hmm.
living there, Ben Webster famously living there, and Thad Jones, in addition to Ed Thigpen, other people. But I totally feel it. My first time in Denmark was in 2018, I think, and I loved it there. I was so excited, like to be in the land where Dexter felt at home,
Yeah.
and especially in Copenhagen. And I feel it too. I love those people. They're so nice and warm, and it feels very direct.
Yeah. I may have lost you.
I
Sorry
think
about that.
you froze, but I don't know when.
Yeah, it's okay. You were talking about them being very direct.
they're my kind of people, and I love the climate over there. It's a beautiful country, and I can totally see myself. I could totally see myself living in Denmark. I can
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone out there wants to pick up the new album, find out about shows, anything pertaining to what's going on in Champion Fulton's world, where do they go?
So, champion.net is your place on the internet for all things champion. That's my name, CHAMPIAN.net. The album is also available on all the streaming sites. You can order physical copies through my website and also through Bandcamp. And that's where all the calendar shows are. And then, of course, I'm on not all, but I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and I post everything there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest to it. It's wonderful. Champion, it's so good to catch up with you, and good luck with everything. I appreciate it. And until next time.
Joe, thank you so much. It's nice to see you also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we get to see each other. It's wonderful. All right. Enjoy the day.
All right. See you later.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.